Hello, and thank you for attending our workshop, Building Bridges, International Pathways and Best Practices in ICT Technology Transfer. I'm very happy that so many of you join us today, and we'll have a lot of interesting things that we talk about today. First of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about me, to be honest. My name is Nina Stelzel. I'm a research assistant at the Deckendorf Institute of Technology, and I'm working, among others, for the project CapTict. So I will going to tell you something about the CapTict project first, just very briefly, so that you know what we do. And after that, I will hand over to our Vice President for Research and Transfer at our Deckendorf Institute of Technology, to Professor Dr. Wolfgang Dorner. He will tell you a little bit more give you a little bit more theoretical context, and then we're going to see some best practice and international case studies about tech transfer. One of them will be about our DD accelerator, which is part of the CapTict project, and one of them will be about a startup, and the other will be about a Silicon Valley program. But you'll hear more about it later. After that, we'll have some more time to discuss, and if you have any questions, you can ask them. And after that, we'll finish with a quick outlook. So I just have to let people in, and then I will continue with the overview of the CapTict project. The aim of the project is to strengthen the capacities for tech transfer and company building and innovations, with a special focus on ICT. It is part of the Interact Danube Region program, so it's funded with EU money. And we started the project in January 2024, and it will still last for about a year. Our lead partner is the Czech Technical University in Prague. To be precise, the Faculty of Information Technology there. And concerning our partners, we have actually 15 of them right now. We started with 16, but unfortunately, due to the war in the Ukraine, one of our partners couldn't continue his work. We also have 8 associated partners in our consortium, so it's really a quite huge project that we'll have, and you can see all the countries our partners are from. So that's that. And the content of the project is, as I told you, the aim is to enhance capacities for tech transfer. And in one of our fields, we focus on higher educational institutions and public research organizations. And for that, we already have done a lot of work. For example, we developed guidelines for especially this target group for effective tech transfer. Right now, it's still a draft, but we'll finish it very soon. And then I hope we can all provide the guidelines to you so that you can really use them. Then we organized 2 online capacity building workshops, one of which is right now. The other one was already in November, but there is on YouTube, you can watch it at the end of the presentation, which we will send to you after the workshop. You can find the link to that recording if you want to still watch it. Then another part in this area is the accelerator, but I will skip this part because my colleague Rory will tell you a lot more about it later on. And another thing that we do within the project is to organize a 2-day international event that will be called ICT technology transfer days for a greener and more digital Danube region. I think that will be very interesting for you too. There will be a lot of different people from different organizations, research institutions, but also our startups and companies will attend. So a lot of time for networking and to really also to present our results and with some knowledge building seminars planned there. The rest of the project is about two other bigger goals. It's about creating access to ICT excellence in our four non-EU countries from our partners, to make cooperation easier, and also for that so-called smart specialization strategies. And within this part of the project, we already developed an action plan, but it's also still a draft, but we'll finish it soon. The last part is about leveraging on European digital innovation hubs and the European Enterprise Network. We already gathered a lot of information about their services and built a digital tool that I hope some of you will visit afterwards and check it out. It's quite good tool, I'd say, to get an overview what services the European Digital Innovation Hubs provide. And then we also developed a toolkit for organization, for the organization of networking events that can be useful for you too, I think. After we finish it, I hope we can provide it to all of you. And then we have also planned some networking events for SMEs, but also for the research institutions. One of those two events will be in a week from now in, if I'm not mistaken, Belgrade. You can just look it up afterwards. When I sent you the presentation, I think it's kind of for short notice, but maybe some of you still want to attend. The other one will be at the end of the year, and it will be online, so maybe we can see some of you there. But I think that was all from me for now, and I think I can hand over to Professor Dr. Wolfgang Dorner, who will tell you a little bit more about the technology transfer process. So I will just stop sharing my presentation, and then I think.
And I will try to take over, and I hope you can see my screen. So good afternoon.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to be with you and to get some minutes to give you some insights. I hope I will not disappoint if it will not be so theoretical with frameworks, etc. But my intention was to give you some insights what we are doing at Deggendorf Institute of Technology, Technische Hochschule Deggendorf, during the past years. I'm now 16 years professor for computer science at Technische Hochschule Deggendorf. To be honest, I started 23 years ago as the scientific assistant to the vice president research and transfer. So I have already some decades of experience in technology and knowledge transfer. 16 years ago, I took over the responsibility for one of our campuses and the Institute of Applied Informatics, which is currently with over 50 employees, the largest institute of the university in a very decentralized location. And for 1.5 years, I have now the responsibility as the Vice President Research and Transfer of the university to try to give our university new additional directions. I will exemplify then at the end. So welcome to Deggendorf and welcome to Technische Hochschule Deggendorf. I think for technology transfer strategy, it's quite important to know a little bit where the university is, what are the circumstances, the framing conditions, the region, what is maybe the tradition and the mindset. So in the beginning, I would like to give you some insights where we are coming from. The backgrounds that shaped our strategy. We are from Deggendorf, a small, cozy city at the Danube in southeastern Germany, Bavaria. And maybe what is a little bit special and makes us different, we are located in Bavaria in a small city. Deggendorf has something like currently 35,000 inhabitants. So it's really a tiny, cozy city. And we are located at the Danube. But as you can see here, we are located in a very rural area. Maybe some of the cities you might know, like Regensburg or Passau, but we have to go approximately 150 kilometers to the west to meet the first larger metropolitan areas like Munich. And we are somewhere in a triangle between Munich, Prague, Czech Republic, and Vienna on the Danube. And in the region where the major cities have between 10,000 and 50,000 inhabitants. But despite the fact that this area is called rural, the economic situation is a little bit different, because in our area, in Deggendorf region, only 1% of the GDP is in the primary sector. We have a huge amount of secondary industries, production technologies, automation, automotive industry plays a quite important role. And especially if you go outside Deggendorf in the surrounding countryside, the secondary sector is even larger. With regards to population, if you compare Deggendorf, the district of Deggendorf with its 120,000 inhabitants, or neighboring districts like Regen or Freyung-Grafenau, with maybe the metropolitan area of Munich, it's obvious to see that it's far smaller. And if you look especially at population of cities, especially where we as a university are operating a campus, for instance, Deggendorf 35,000 inhabitants, Freyung, one of our campus sites with 7,500 inhabitants, and you look at population density, then you will see it's really rural with regard to the inhabitant situation, population situation. Well, Deggendorf University is quite young. It was founded in 1994 as a University of Applied Sciences. In 2000, we received our first campus located directly at the Danube, as you can see here. And looking at the tradition of the university, why it was founded, because there was no university around. So it came into a spot where there was no market for academics, and especially the graduates from high schools had to travel long distances to find the first technically oriented university. And one of the core ideas was that the university should address regional topics. And this was the origin with four faculties and 4 study programs. So we started in 1994 with 78 students, so small and already a university. We had 4 faculties: electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, civil and construction engineering, and business and management. The idea of our first president behind this structure was to address the demands of local industries and provide diploma programs equivalent to our current master programs that we have now under the umbrella of Bologna, to address the demands of local industry through study program that perfectly match with the local industries. So we had a strong building industry, of course, mechanical engineering with regard to automotive production technologies, electrical engineering, also a very current topic in the region, and business and management, I think a demand for everybody. Already in 2002, we started what will become important later on, first further education programs with an MBA. It was the second MBA program at a state university, the first further educational master program at a state university in Bavaria. And already in 2001, in the former premises of the university was an interims building. The municipality started with an incubator for startups, because the idea of the region was already that a university might provide a benefit with regard to the settlement of new industries, of new businesses, and also the formation of startups and new businesses that are technology oriented. And a quite important milestone then was in 2009, when we started our decentralization strategy with the foundation of the first technology transfer centers. We call them in Deggendorf Technology Campus. What was coming out? What are the current numbers that you might be interested in? Is that we as a university have an annual budget and turnaround of over 100 million euros at the moment, where more than 40% stem from transfer and research activities. So this is money that we get from industry, from public funding for research activities, which is not part of our regular state budget. Second, what came out is a significant growth of the university. Although Deggendorf is the smallest university city in Bavaria, we are currently the fourth largest university of applied sciences in Bavaria, with almost 10,000 students. So Deggendorf was planned to have in the small city 2,000 students. Currently, we have almost 5 times more students. And what makes the current profile, and what is maybe what are some reasons for the growth rate that we did not only have in number of students, that's just one indicator, but in general with regard to growth of services, growth of turnaround, we have on an annual basis growth of our R&D services. I think it makes our current profile. The university grew from 4 faculties into 8 faculties. How did we do that? Through an extension of established programs to better match local demands. So from mechanical engineering, we derived robotics as a study program. From electrical engineering, we derived computer science and information technology. From business administration, we derived business IT. And from civil and construction engineering, we derived environmental engineering, which means our growth strategy was always directed towards trends in industry and business. On the one hand side, already currently existing trends in the region to support local industries, but on the other hand side, also identifying new trends that might support local industry to grow in new direction or provide the basis for the settlement and development of startups and new industries in the region. So the main mission statement behind Deggendorf University was always to be a driver of a local innovation system, either as a supporter to provide workforce through students and qualified workforce, or on the other hand side, as a driver through thriving thematics, topics. Currently with 9,300 students, we also had a strong impact in the region due to demographic change. So we have a decreasing number of young people in the region, which we compensated by international students. So almost 50% of our students are from the world, coming in from the world, 100 nations. So we are with Technical University in Munich, among the most international universities, even in Germany. We established a decentralization strategy. We have now 3 study campuses, and with regard to transfer, most important, we are operating 18 transfer and research centers at 16 locations in our rural regions. From one study program 2002 in further education, we currently have 700 students in further education. Also here we can see later on an important instrument of transfer, because the local demand in a non-academic industrial region for developing academic profiles of the workforce, further education is a main instrument that might support local industries through additional services a university might provide. And now what is also new at the university for the past 1.5 years is that we have 2 vice presidents responsible for this transfer topic. On the one hand side, it's me as vice president for research and transfer, coming from the classical role, but we also have now, as one of the first universities in Germany, a vice president for the 3rd mission. I will tell later on a little bit more about what the 3rd mission is. But now, what is it with regard to these transfer and research centers that we are operating in our area? In 2009, the government, Bavarian government, state government, asked for new ideas how to foster innovation and technology around Bavaria. And they offered a special budget. And together with the district representatives of neighboring districts, we developed a concept about a decentralization strategy for us as a university to better support industries in the neighborhood. Looking at the map, you saw before we have Munich, we have the border to Austria, the border to Czech Republic, Prague here, approximately 200 kilometers from Deggendorf. in this rural area of the Bavarian forest, Šumava Mountains on the borderlands to the Czech Republic. We started with 2 campuses, one in Teisnach, that you can see here a little bit north of Deggendorf, and another one east of Deggendorf in Freyung. What was the idea behind it? It was to be closer to our industrial customers, our partners from industry in R&D, with regard to specific topics that form something like a cluster in this region. And we had one cluster here in the Teisnach area about glass. Glass is a traditional working topic in this region and developed from classical white products for restaurants, hotellery, to high-tech glasses for laser technology, precision optics, and other purposes. Mirrors, for instance, for ESA and NASA are produced here in the Teisnach area. And second, we already anticipated the development of Industry 4.0 and digitization by building up a computer science research institute at the technology campus in Freyung. This was an initial idea, and especially in Munich, some of our colleagues doubted very much that this strategy to establish research centers far out in the forest, you can say, that's the Bavarian forest, it's a mountainous area, would be of success. But what happened was we have Teisnach, 2,000 inhabitants, city of Freyung, 7,500 inhabitants. These were for longer times the fastest growing institutes of our university and also in the region, due to the fact that we established a completely new concept how to think R&D in a rural area. And I would say in the past, a lot of people wouldn't have thought that R&D in a rural area would be a good idea due to the lack of concentrations of R&D actors, industries, etc. Here you can see 2 of our further campuses, which are focused on production technology and on sustainability and motion dynamics. But what makes such a profile of a technology campus? So on the one hand side, it's a regional R&D infrastructure. We build it in rural municipalities between 2,000, 10,000 inhabitants, and such a technology campus hosts 1 to 2 institutes, between 15 and 50 researchers in its maximum extent currently. The most important topic about such a technology campus is that the thematic focus of the campus follows the demand and concentration of local industries. So it's, I think, quite close to the idea of a smart specialization strategy and amends a regional economic strategy by an R&D strategy that is not thought from a classical R&D perspective, but now from a business, industry, and economic perspective. So you can say we are funded by the Ministry of Education and Research, but we are funded as an instrument for economic development of rural areas through R&D. So we are supported by the state, of course, but we are also supported, it's quite important with regard to the motivation, by the municipality itself, who provides the premises, the infrastructure, the building for us, and of course by local industry. And this is the main demand, our main partner in the region, with whom we are doing most of our research. The main thing is what we are doing with regard to our philosophy. We have something like 50%, 60% of our R&D at international level, but then the rest in the region. And the main transfer path of such a technology campus is always to provide a specific excellence in applied R&D at a European or international level, but be a transfer instrument to infiltrate knowledge and technology into the local industry, so to have a regional impact. And of course, service orientation. So we are not the ivory tower working on its own purpose, but our orientation is always towards our customer, who are demanding our products and services, which means the range of our services are from classical R&D to engineering services. Some example, what we did in the past, especially my institute, the Technology Campus in Freyung, we hosted the first BMW project for electromobility in rural areas. So this Mini that you can see here, electric vehicle, drove in Shanghai, drove in Munich, drove in New York, in Frankfurt. but it never drove in a rural area. And together with the ministry, we approached BMW to set up a test site for electromobility in a rural area. BMW first doubted whether this is a good strategy and found out at the end that the satisfaction of customers of these electric vehicles were highest, not in New York, not in Shanghai, not in Tokyo, but in the Bavarian forest. So the product completely fulfilled the expectations of the customer. We are partner of Deutsche Bahn for a project about autonomous bus services operated in a neighboring district, Passau, a first test project of Deutsche Bahn to set up autonomous bus services in Germany. We are collaborating with institutions from the social sector, cultural and educational sector, for instance, like here, digital technologies in a museum. But we are also operating and transferring knowledge in different ranges where we're partner of the German Research Center for Aerospace, DLR, German equivalent to the American NASA, about early warning systems for natural hazards in Colombia, Medellin, city of Medellin, a project where we were able to use high-tech technologies and scale them down to low-cost products and transfer then especially the findings from this project and from DLR and from 2 universities then into applications in Germany. With regard to the local impact, also other transfer activities going completely different directions. So for instance, almost 10 years ago, we established an hackathon, normally well known as an instrument for computer nerds in cities like in Munich, in Nuremberg, or in Berlin. We established the Bayerwald Hackathon, which became one of the core instruments of transfer and economic development in the ICT branch in our region, with 100 to 120 participants twice a year. It's a bring your own topic hackathon, so not a thematic hackathon, no challenge-based hackathon. So as you can see, the development of transfer goes along a long line. It started 1994 with the idea of the government to establish something like a research campus, a research institution, a university in the rural area, went through the development of first incubators. They developed from an ITC, Innovation Technology Campus 1, to ITC 2, an extension of these campuses, the foundation of the first technology campuses outside Deggendorf in Freyungen and Teisnach, up to now, where we as a university are operating 18 of these technology centers in 16 locations. The core of our university, I think, can be formulated on the one hand side in our DNA. We have been and we are still a university of applied sciences, although we are allowed to call ourselves a technical university, which means our research is application oriented. We are strong in research and transfer, and especially we are strong because we have a regional thematic focus and we work impact oriented. So our main success is always if there is a demand for our services. And I think this makes also the main USPs and profiles that we developed. We are regional, that's core mission statement, application orientation, transfer orientation, and the topic we are driving for the past 5 years is also this entrepreneurial mindset. Not only to educate our students, but also as a university to think a university in specific branches like an enterprise and to work entrepreneurial. And this leads me to, from these thoughts in the background where we are coming from, to some thoughts and ideas about technology transfer in general. So I think this goes a little bit into the direction of a framework. I would not say that we are something like a best practice. I think we are doing good in some things, especially with regard to the local situation. But I would say there's also a lot we can learn from others. So this is just some thoughts of mine, where we are currently, where we are coming from, and also where some directions might lead us in the closer future. And if we look first into the pillars of a university to see how we can think transfer, then of course universities by its DNA are on the one hand side, first pillar research, and second pillar education and teaching, which means there was always the thought of transfer from research into the related study programs that a university can educate. But the idea of transfer in a modern university, I would say for the past 2 to 3 years, got extended by one important term, the so-called third mission, which contains all the services, either paid services or services for free, that a university can provide for the region, for local or super-regional stakeholders, as additional services due to transfer of knowledge as a mind leader, as a thought leader in specific domains where the university has an expertise. So the question is, how can we structure and formulate what we are doing in research education, and how can this transfer, the third mission, be interacting with it? And from this perspective, I would say we have some problems currently. Why? Because with regard to terminology, we are talking about transfer. If you would go outside the university and ask somebody, what is the transfer service of your university? The first question would be not an answer, it would be a question, what does transfer mean? We talk about STEM education, we talk about certificates that we offer, or even worse, the current term in further education of micro-credentials. So the question is, what terms are we using? And on the other hand side, what are the terms that our customers, our partners, our stakeholders would expect from us? So my first important question mark is about, also from our perspective, I'm questioning how we are doing transfer currently at our university. Are these the right terms? Are we ready to offer our services and products? Second, if we look into transfer and the TRLs, I think you're familiar with this idea of technology readiness level, where we have from TRL 1 to 3, the basic research, into 7, 8, 9, applied research, product orientation, some kind of a ladder where a technology, a development, an R&D development climbs up the ladder to get into new dimensions and more application oriented. We have to think about what does other terms mean and where are our partners. And first there comes the term of innovation, which already covers some of these steps on our 9-stage ladder from basic research into applied research. Second, in especially 6 to 9, we overlap with the idea of product development. And the area of transfer, if we take knowledge transfer, technology transfer, IP transfer strategies as instruments of transfer, then we can see that transfer covers even 4, 5, 6 of these stages of the technology readiness level. And this is one important issue because especially at the stages 6 to 9, we as universities, if we really would think technology and knowledge transfer seriously, then we are in competition with economic actors from industry, service providers, engineering companies, etc. So in this domain, we have a strong overlap, which means we will have to think about our instruments of transfer as they exist, like R&D from a service perspective. So R&D is not only an activity of a university, but R&D is a product or a service that a university has to provide to its customers. And this includes not only the content of R&D, but also everything around, like for instance, product placement, pricing strategy, tax-related issue, legal and competitive aspects that we have as a university have to consider if we go into competition with industries and services. And you can see also then as a consequence, not only R&D services, but also engineering services that a university might provide to better transfer R&D results at the far end, TRL 8 and 9, to local industries that are not able to do R&D, research and development on its own. And these are our classical customers at the technology campus, mid-sized companies between 100 and 500 employees, having a strong demand for R&D services, but no own departments for in-depth research or even for in-depth development activities. And that's where we come into play. So we have to think competition oriented, we have to think product oriented, and we have to think service oriented. There are several instruments I think we can list up. So it's, for instance, publications as a classical instrument of transfer, but not in the service in a scientific domain, like high prestige scientific journals with an impact factor internationally ranked, but also publications for practitioners as a transfer into practice. We have to think about further educational programs, the idea of university spin-offs, where we are currently also evaluating not only investments into spin-offs of the university, but also the idea to hold as a university virtual shares, to have an easier possibility to transfer, for instance, IPs, intellectual property rights, into corresponding universities where we as a university own parts of the IP, but also the founding team owns parts, and how to establish an investment situation where we as a university can support, on the one hand side, our own startups and spin-offs, but on the other hand side, benefit from shares and investments into these successful, hopefully successful startups. In general, how do we handle IP transfer and the licensing of intellectual property rights, and then also strategies to establish transfer centers for decentralized strategy. So I think if we look into something like a framework for successful transfer, then we have to think about what is the mission and the vision that we as a university are following. And that's not only something that is written down, but it's something about a mindset that needs to be inhaled by the whole university or as a minimum core members, and should then also result in a strategy. We should think about product and service orientation, and especially the place of the service. So it's not sufficient as a university to expect that customers will come to you, but it's also important to especially to establish something like points of sales, points of contacts, where people can come with you in a reasonable distance, where you can show and interact with your stakeholders or customers. And we have to think this topic of regional impact versus international orientation and excellence, where still a lot of universities are looking especially on this international orientation and excellence, but sometimes miss to address the first point, why we are paid for, not to be internationally excellent, that's just a side effect, but we should have, from an economic perspective, a regional impact. I would like to present you also 3 topics that currently have are of high topics on our agenda as a university. First, it's the idea to establish more transfer through further education. Almost 10% of our students are currently in further education, so they are in industry, they are workforce. And what we would like to extend is more services and offers as further educational programs, certificates, seminars, and online courses to make our knowledge as a university better accessible to industrial partners, their employees, or the people in the region and beyond, to be accessible as one instrument of knowledge transfer. A second topic, driven by also current political developments, is that we are building up capacities that we have already, but providing them now as services and products in the domain of digital autonomy and open source. The high dependency, especially in the ICT sector, on American companies, American cloud providers, American software products, is a significant risk to our industry. We as a university have in our computer science department, but also in our computation center, a lot of competences and capacities where we might provide alternatives that will strengthen ICT knowledge and digital autonomy within society, within our industry and other stakeholders, and open source, where we as university have traditionally a long tradition, have a lot of knowledge in the open source domain, which might be one of the main pillars for digital autonomy. And also driven by international developments, is a focus that we had already during the past. So we did defense and security research at individual institutes for almost 20 years as a university, but also to strengthen the capacities and the transfer that is currently needed to enable our defense sector to cope with the challenges we are currently facing in the ICT and defense sector with regard to, for instance, digital sovereignty and the cybersecurity aspect. So sum it up. I hope I was able to give you a little bit of insights about Deggendorf Institute of Technology, Technische Hochschule, to see how a university can shape and form a strategy, a vision, a mindset to set up, I would say, a successful policy and development during the past decades, on the one hand side, but with the important acknowledgement that this is not 100% transferable, because this is our mission and our statement and our strategy, depending on our framing situation that we found in Deggendorf, and where we try to interact in a highly complex ecosystems of different players. Second, to give you some insights from our side, what is important to formulate the strategy, which things you should have in mind, especially this product and service orientation. And third, maybe some ideas about future cooperation potentials between us, between you and other partners with regard to 3 topics in further education, defense, security, and in digital autonomy and open source. So thank you for your interest, and I'm still available for discussions, questions, or what you ever have in mind. You will find my contact data, so please contact me via email or through my LinkedIn profile. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. I think it was really impressive, as somebody already mentioned in the chat. So I think people enjoyed it a lot. Me too. So I was wondering, is there anybody who has a direct question or any comments or anything?
I saw Jan Urban raising his hand.
Okay, perfect. Feel free to ask.
No, it was a mistake, Wolfgang.
Oh, okay.
My comment was that I found your results impressive. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Maybe still one comment, yeah, or a question. Where is you had the TRL scale, yeah? Where does your ambition end?
If you go to the left-hand side, we start at TRL 3 or 4. That's the maximum where we go. So at my institute, I would say the maximum is around 4 to 5 in computer science. We have some other institutes that go far beyond and somewhere between 2 and 3 in the transfer.
Maybe
if we
on
go
the other,
to the other hand
scale.
side, to the other hand side, I would say what we are also doing partially is engineering services. Especially, as I mentioned, we have a lot of companies, for instance, in Germany, in Freyung, there is the company Thomas Krenn. It's the 3rd largest manufacturer of server hardware. First is Dell, second is HP, and third is Thomas Krenn. And they started approximately 7-8 years ago into hot fluid computing, completely new domain, but did not have any capacities in development and nothing in R&D. Where we partnered up with this company, which was just across the other hand side of the valley from my institute, to become something like the interim R&D department of the company and develop the necessary skills, but also technologies for this company to develop the first hot fluid computing systems in a prototypical stage and deliver them also to the German Center for Aerospace Research, the DLR. I think it was the first how is it called, pre-market procurement in the European Union, the first one in Germany, which was won by Thomas Krenn due to this specific situation. And now Thomas Krenn has built up on basis of this cooperation an own R&D department as a manufacturer, starting at this time with 150 employees. They currently have something like 350 to 400 employees. So we saw our jobs in, on the one hand side, engineering service, I would say at a high level, but on the other hand side, as an enabling partner, not with the main objective to be the full lifetime engineering partner of this company, but also to transfer knowledge through these project activities to our partner.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And as regards to spin-offs, And going maybe even further in on the product scale?
Yeah. With regard to spin-off, that's what I mentioned is this investment in virtual share strategy. So on the one hand side, we are allowed to invest in companies. On the other hand side, we are also doing something that's called virtual shares, which means we have a legal contract with the company, especially if it's a university spin-off, that guarantees us parts of the revenues and shares equivalent to the original shares. So it's not a share contract, but it's a share equivalent contract where we at the end, for instance, at a successful IPO, would receive in equivalent a compensation to transfer our rights fully then to the IPO company. And this allows us, from a legal perspective, to provide different kinds of services to the company because then we are a shareholder. And some aspects of competition then are changed. We are under completely different calculatory aspects, which allows us, for instance, to transfer IPs to the spin-off for free if we receive then as a compensation virtual shares.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Martin, you're raising your hand. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, thank you. Wolfgang, thanks a lot for your presentation. I repeat from my colleagues that it's quite impressive and inspiring. I'm from Prague, Czech Technical University, Faculty of Information Technology, and I had several questions written down during your presentation, but many of them you already managed to, let's say, answer. But still few remain. I like your approach of even your regional branches that you set up over time, which means clearly that you had to have some very strong relationship with the industry, or at least know about their commitment. Maybe if you could reflect on this, how did you manage to build such a strong relationship? How did you manage to get people to those rural or mountainous places to work? That would be my another question, a little bit to the past and to the present. How do you continue? How do you maybe map, scan the interests of the industry to provide the best service and best offer of service or product nowadays?
Yeah. Partially, you might also ask Nina about it. What is the motivation for young, successful scientists to choose for a rural campus and institution and not go to a metropolitan area? But maybe as a mixture, my motivation was to become a professor at 33, quite a young age, and start a career at a non-existing institute and build it up. So it was something like a startup story. That was my personal motivation to build up something new, to have a chance and opportunity. Even it was in the beginning a limited contract, 5 years contract. So was very much bound to the success then of the outcomes. We are hiring at the local level. So we have a lot of students at the university that are doing their bachelor master degree at the university, coming from these regions and looking for opportunities to find a way back. So I think it's always good for someone to leave home, to get out, to learn something outside, but then also offer opportunities to come back. And that's what we are offering as a campus also to our students to study in Deggendorf, even study in Munich, a technical university, but find through the campus a possibility to come back into the home region, and also find a possibility through the campus to get back and get through the campus into local industries. So that's, I think, one of the most important sources for our HR. And third is, of course, if you have already achieved a certain level, you can also start to acquire on a national or even international level and attract people if they find an opportunity on the one hand side to work at an international level, like Nina working in a European project, but on the other hand side also to see how they can have a regional impact and collaborate with industries, with local companies. We have a lot of hidden champions, for instance, in the region, which are not well known to anyone outside the region and even within the region, because they are highly specialized, but are on the top 5 companies in their domain at the global level. And this is something where we also do something like an HR recruitment for the region.
Okay, thank you. One additional question with respect to the technology transfer itself. You mentioned instruments of transfer, and also you mentioned that quite a high portion of the budget of 100 million that you have is related to the industry cooperation. What is the maybe most utilized or most favorite instrument of transfer within this budget?
If you take the 40 million that we make through services and funded industry-oriented activities, we have almost 10% from further education. So all our further educational programs, MBA, certificates, seminars, are fee-based, and this makes already 10%. So 4 million are further educational services. And then we have something like 8 to 10 million, which is pure industry contracting. Where we have contracts with industry. We have currently something like, I would say, 200K in IPs and some perspective through startups, which you can at the moment not financially value because these are pre-investments due to a transfer of IPs into startups. We have already first virtual shares of startups, and then the rest, around 30 million, is pure R&D in 90% corporational with industries funded by the state of Bavaria, German government or European Union, but only due to the fact because we are partnering with the industry partners. So I think it's comparable to the former Czech Delta program. It's always a cooperation between industry and academia that is necessary to receive the grant.
Thank you very much. I would like to leave space for others to ask as well, because I would have more, but I will leave it for others since we have only 5 minutes left. Thank you, Wolfgang. Anyways, then I would have like a closing question for you, Wolfgang, like the outlook for the future, maybe some challenges with respect to technology transfer at your situation. If you can just reflect in general, what are your views? Or maybe opportunities as well, of course.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is under the current economic situation, changes in the national budgets for R&D spending, so R&D funds. And on the other hand side, also, of course, due to the investments we had in the past and the development also at other universities, the competition in this domain. So on the one hand side, we have lower spendings by corporates and by the state, and on the other hand side, more competition by more players on the market. So there are private institutions, also Fraunhofer, for instance, other universities of applied sciences going into more applied research. So there is more competition. I think this is the most important aspect. For me, the main driver will be from our side to define and develop distinguished services and products that we can offer to the customers. And diversify more with regard to the budget, to get more independent from the classical R&D budgets, as you can find them in the German Ministry of Research or the Bavarian Ministry for the Economy, and go into new domains, such as mentioned defense industry, for instance, where we have already a tradition, where we are bundling currently our internal R&D capacities and have developed a strategy and also first corporations on a larger scale. And second, with regard to the services, to better align our products. So as I have shown in one image with the 3 pillars, that we have the classical relation between research and the transfer into teaching, through an alignment of R&D activities and corresponding study programs. And I think with regard to transfer, we need to define products at the end that also align with R&D and education, classical teaching, as additional services, and to become in these specific domains where we have capacities and knowledge, then an alignment of products and services that can be communicated and that are also understandable for the customer. Because as I mentioned, product names like micro-credentials or just transfer activities is for people outside the universities a no-brainer, not understandable, not conceivable, and they don't know what we are offering. So it means new forms of branding, new terms that we can use in our outer communication as really the 5 Ps of marketing and to apply it to our transfer activities.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. I'm definitely sure we will have some other meeting maybe on a bilateral basis. Since you mentioned you are in Prague, or we would, thanks to the project as well, somehow get to you. But definitely, I can see a lot of synergies also with our faculty and our department, where we try to develop some kind of strategies for technology transfer or push them forward. And I think a lot of information you already have an experience will be very valuable for us, and maybe you will also have something from us in exchange as well. So thank you very much, Wolfgang. And Nina, please go ahead. I believe Pavel is already here.
So basically, my presentation is about my experience with building a startup or spin-off while being associate professor, maybe PhD student at the time. It will be about Recombi, the company I have co-founded with my PhD students, because I wanted to prevent them leaving for industry. So I was basically looking for something that can keep them stay in my group, and we founded a company that was like closely related to the research we were doing. At the same time, because it was 10 years ago, we didn't have much chance, to get funding for it. So we basically bootstrapped from the beginning, just some like short bank loan, and that was it. And over 10 years, we managed to grow to 50 people now, and we have customers all over the world. So maybe if you can give next slide, please. What was challenging is that 10 years ago, as you see, we didn't have support for university spin-offs at all. And basically, the university was not ready for owning a share in a company. Even rector was not interested. I personally visited the rector and asked him, "Hey, we have this plan. Can this be official spin-off of the company? Of the university?" And it was actually too risky for him to approve. And at the same time, the process was like extremely long. Like there were like 6 boards that had to confirm, and the process itself would took at least 2 years. Also, we didn't have IP, for example, from some project to transfers, because it was more like building on top of our research that was kind of open source. And the university also didn't have any idea what is it owning a share in a company. Yeah, so now the situation changed a bit. Because I am now in the process of spinning off officially one another like small startup, and it's like completely different story. We have a commercialization vehicle at the university, which is taking 10% share in the company, typically, and the process is very smooth. Yeah, I was quite surprised that all the everything was agile, and we are almost ready after a couple of months of negotiation. However, I don't expect much of the involvement, which is, from my perspective, better when you have too active involvement of the university in the startup. It can be more negative thing than positive thing. Okay, next slide, please. What we have done instead, we are basically running a joint research laboratory at the university, and it's being partially funded by the company. Basically, the rules are that the results are under MIT license. Also, everything is open source, and the incentives is really to push people and members of the team to publish the results in top tier venues such as like major AI conferences or like really good quality journals. At the same time, we do offer students and researchers access to real data sets, computing resources, and sometimes even online results, meaning some of the best performing algorithms can be really validated in a real world. So next slide, please. In my opinion, this is super crucial when it comes to such collaborations, because you can basically build on top of existing work easily. You can maintain the IP and extend it in the university. Even more companies can contribute in the field. It's not just about Recombi, but if there are now like more companies, now we have Sky and we have Glami. There are like 2 more companies that are involved in the lab and are also like sponsoring the research, and they are benefiting from the result, which is great. And from my perspective, the university benefits a lot because they have publications out of it. So this is something what is most precise result typically for any university. Good. Next slide. Here are some specific outcomes we managed to achieve. Basically, a part of conferences and open source projects, we were also able to organize regular competitions for students on like real world data, and it's always like almost 50 students participating. Very nice competition. When it comes to organization of academic events, we are now in the process of organizing REDSYST 2025 in Prague, which is more than 1,000 participants, and I think this is something that would not happen if we don't have this laboratory at the faculty. Next slide, please. I think this is possible only because my co-founders are PhDs. They know what the research is, and they know that they like to support it. Even not only applied research, but also fundamental research. So it's very much specific to the mindset of the company. And I previously was vice dean, and I was trying to convince some collaborating companies to invest in research, and it was always like super tough job. And I was like successful more with smaller Czech owned small startups with well-educated founders than with international companies, like major international companies. But maybe in other ecosystem it might be different. Basically, what is kind of like success story also is that this is building a pipeline of highly educated students, and we are supporting students even within their PhDs and also postdoc positions. So we can, together with like university, company and university, offer competitive salary, which is really competitive in terms of like other commercial opportunities. And students who are just finishing are much better result-wise than their peers, that they don't have funding and they don't have access to resources. And yeah, if you look at the website about Recombi Research, you will see all the publications and results and open source project if you are interested. Next slide, please. What I also like, we are not only one. I think this model is quite unique. However, what I like is the model Maria Bielikova piloted in Slovakia recently. She founded basically private research institute that was initially funded by companies, and in 2 years she successfully transformed it into a research organization that is capable of receiving a lot of funding from EU Horizon projects, probably the most successful institution in Slovakia these days. And they are just doing great, and they didn't forget, you know, their relationship with companies. So it's still very much, you know, pro-business type of research organization. So this is something that I think we would love something similar have here in Prague, because this might also create a pressure to our traditional universities. They are not willing to change much, you know, and they are not willing to incentivize researchers into doing something else than publication and teaching. This might also fill the gap in funding, especially when you have technology readiness level 3 to 6. We are seeing this also in our project. Then this funding gap is still apparent, and you can basically fund it from resources from this type of institute. Next slide, please. That's it.
So, thank you. I hope you had a nice break. I think we can continue now, and I would like to especially thank Rory for being so flexible today. And if it's okay for you, Rory, I think I would just share the slides for you, and you can tell me when to change the slide.
Yep, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, perfect. Then your first slide.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, let me just sort my screen out. Bro, okay.
Yes,
I think someone needs to be popped on mute there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just keep talking. So thank you for having me to talk about the Digital Danube Accelerator today. As Nina already mentioned at the start of the session, this is being delivered as one of the core pillars of the CapTTict ICT program, funded by Interreg Danube region and co-funded by the European Union. So I think we can skip to the next slide. We just wanted to cover off sort of a few key points in this sort of 10-15 minutes that we've got here, which is a bit of an intro to the actual accelerator within the CapTTict ICT program, a bit of an overview of the program structure, and then some of the sort of key evaluations and learnings based on where we're at within sort of the broader program delivery. So if we just go to the next slide, please, Nina. So I think I'll skip over this largely, as Nina's touched on most of what was on that slide. But basically, the program does sit within the context of the CapTT ICT. The accelerator sits within the context of that program, what we've been hearing about earlier today. I think one of the key interesting things to take away from this slide when thinking about sort of international acceleration programs, program designs, good practice, etc., is the point of sort of the geographical spread and the consortium spread. So we can see kind of on here, there are 9 different countries represented within the consortium and involved within the delivery of the acceleration program. And the consortium, as of now, as mentioned before, we're now at 15 partners with, I think, potentially 9 associated or something like that. So we're a very large consortium of partners with a strong geographical spread. So I think that's something which we see as one of the key strengths of the accelerator program, and something that we have sort of looked to leverage as something that we kind of offer the startups participating. So if we just head to the next slide, please. In terms of what the program is actually covering off, and the slide seems a bit off, which may be my fault. If so, apologies. But basically, the accelerator program, thank you for that, is it's a 4-month program. We're delivering 3 cohorts over the course of this calendar year, so 2025. And in each cohort, we're looking to target 10 startups. So based on sort of the applications we've received, how we're sort of feeling as a program in terms of how we're going to balance the quality and the sort of let's say demographics of the startups, there's flexibility on the number within the cohort, but that's sort of the broad target that we've aimed for. In terms of what we're actually looking to achieve, as you can see here, there are sort of 3 key things tied to the program delivery itself. So particularly targeting sort of the startups, the entrepreneurs who are looking to be accelerated. We're looking to develop critical knowledge and skills for their sort of initiatives, for their startups, to accelerate their growth and make sure they're performing at a high level, and to support their, either, depending on the maturity of the startup, their entry into key markets, or their sort of growth within those key markets. As I mentioned on the previous slide, sort of one of our key strengths as a program delivery team is the geographical diversity and the diversity of partners within that. And tied to that is the second benefit in terms of actually making a more cohesive, well-connected, transnational network for EU startup growth and global platforms to increase that exposure across different sectors. And then the last piece on here is really focusing instead on improved institutional capacity. So here, I think there are 2 angles that we're looking at. So the first 2 are probably primarily focused on the startups, definitely the first one. Whereas this improved institutional capacity within the actual program consortium itself, we have a number of different partner types. So I'm from GeForce, we're a venture capital climate tech fund. So I probably should have introduced myself earlier. We're an example of one of the business partners within the consortium. We also have numerous higher educational partners, some of whom have experience with acceleration services and programs, some of whom do not. So again, this is also an opportunity for those partners who do not have the experience there to participate and learn on how they can support their own ecosystems in the future once this program has completed and moved on. So really thinking about the long-term values that the program can deliver. Should we jump to the next slide? So in terms of the actual program itself and kind of what we are promoting within it. So thinking about it from the perspective of the startups, I just wanted to quickly touch on kind of what we see as that core value proposition and who it is really targeted at. So one of the main things, as I said, it's a 4-month program, 9 countries covered. We have mentors from available from almost all of those countries. And whether or not we have mentors or workshop speakers from each of those countries, we have the broader network provided by the institutions that are involved. As I said, in terms of the consortium, we have expertise from across venture capital, technology transfer experts from broader business environments and innovation support, as well as a depth of expertise and experience from academia and higher education institutions. So a really broad breadth of understanding and knowledge there, which can be tailored to any startup's particular need, whether their core focus is more on commercialization at this stage or progressing sort of science-led R&D, access to facilities, etc. That breadth of expertise, I think, is very strong and can be tailored to each startup. Strategic industry partnerships, again, tied to that sort of the breadth of the consortium for all of the startups who are involved in these programs. We see the network of our partners as a massive strategic advantage, where if they're looking to engage in, particularly in hospitals in the healthcare sector, or if they want to engage, if they're a solar startup and they want to engage with sort of developers and things like that, amongst our organizations, that's something where we have sort of a broad outreach that we can facilitate for them. We've got growth funding expertise, etc. Sort of, I would say, a lot of the fundamentals that you would expect to see in many acceleration programs, but sort of delivered from mentors with kind of real world experience in these, as well as combining that with a sort of theoretical foundation as well. So a strong combination of the two. So I think those are sort of the core value proposition pieces. The other thing, just to mention, it's on the slide, is this lens of the facilities access. So again, tied to the breadth of the consortium, different partners do have sort of access and whether it's lab space, co-working spaces, etc., that can provide significant advantages to startups who are at an early stage, who don't have much in the way of resources. So that's also something which we're making sure that the startups have access to. In terms of who we're targeting, there are a few sort of core parameters here. So first and foremost, we are looking for them to be sort of a largely science-based project or startup, with a fairly, in terms of the TRL, we've started off fairly early, so it's TRL 3+. And the core piece here is just that they need to be tied to the ICT domain. The team needs to be sort of 2 or more members, so we're not looking for sort of individual founders with an idea. We are looking for something which has started to take shape. And again, tied to sort of the science academia lens, we're looking for them to be a student or a researcher as well from the countries which are participating in the project. Should we jump to the next slide? There we go. I'll just skim over this. Basically, in terms of what we're offering, we are on your desktop screen. There we go. That's fine. So as I mentioned, it's a 4-month program. Obviously, there's quite a detailed evaluation and selection process. I probably won't really run through that now. If there are any questions on how we've approached that, I'm happy to sort of field those either on this call or afterwards. Likewise, with the onboarding process, the core elements of the program are the mentoring itself. So we provide one-to-one mentoring where we pair the startups and the mentors based on sort of the profile of each to find the best fit. And there are fortnightly sessions over the course of 4 months, so roughly 8 sessions there. Similarly with the workshops, there are workshops on, let's say, startup growth essentials and fundamentals that we try to target. And then we have a couple of webinars for each cohort, which are targeted at, let's say, more kind of like inspirational, broader themes, which we think are of importance to the cohort. Before I move on to peer-to-peer learning, just probably to mention, we are now starting the delivery of cohort 2. So we completed cohort 1 last month, and the program structure that you can see on the screen here is the program structure for cohort 2. And I mention that because we have adapted it based on the feedback that we got in the first cohort. So we've sort of put in place regular feedback loops. And one of the key things that we heard from the participants, and this is relevant, this is something we've been hearing more and more across multiple EU projects, because we're sort of involved in several delivering similar acceleration activities. And I think that key learning was that startups are keen to have more and more peer-to-peer learning activities. The accelerator is a remote first program. And because of that, whilst we sort of have kind of the international event in Prague, which will be delivered to all 3 cohorts, it is remote first. So startups do value the opportunity to connect with their peers and to get those shared learnings. So that's something which we're introducing both in this program and in others that we're delivering. And I think for anyone who's interested in delivering programs themselves or in participating in things, this is sort of something which we've been seeing as a bit more of a stronger trend that is coming out at the moment, particularly for those remote delivery ones. Obviously in person, that's a far stronger element. The last 2 on here, I mentioned facility access dependent on local availability, and that international event, which will be delivered at the start of next year, which we again see as a core part of the program, even if it's delivered outside of that 4-month window, which will be really focused on promoting networking, industry, investor outreach, etc. So it should be a really exciting event for the program and for all of the startups who are involved as well. Should we jump onto the next slide, please, Nina? So this is actually just the last slide. And what I wanted to do was, I guess, a bit more of a reflection on what's gone well, what we can improve on, and what are some of those, I guess, key learnings. As I say, we've delivered the first cohort, we're into the second, so it's too early for any learnings on the second cohort, but I think there were lots of really useful takeaways that we got from the first. So well, I'd say we're very pleased with sort of, we requested sort of feedback both from mentors and from startups to understand sort of how they saw the program, and some pretty good scores on there, but we were sort of really focused as much as anything on the constructive feedback that we could extract from this. So I'll just run through a few of these key points. And again, if anyone has questions afterwards, happy to sort of field those and reflect further on any of these. But I think starting with the point of flexibility, within this program, as I mentioned, flexibility and clarity probably go hand in hand here. One of the strengths, as I said, was the fact that we have sort of up to 15 partners who are able to contribute to this, up to mentors from 10 different institutions, etc. But one of the challenges of that is obviously coordinating and making sure everyone has the same understanding of the program, the same implementation, that the startups have the same experience, and everyone gets equal sort of value from this. So one of the things that we found was the importance of sort of a flexible approach when it comes to the implementation. So in cohort 1, in our sort of briefings to the mentors, to the startups on the onboarding process, etc., one of the things that we would that we said was quite kind of each of the mentoring sessions is an hour long. And lots of the startups and the founders took that to mean you need to be on this call for an hour, 8 times over the program. And very often, the reality of this, based on what both mentors and startups have said, is that they can get the value that they need from a 30-minute session. And I would say most successful founders often would rather focus on sort of like shrinking the time and doing everything as quickly as possible and getting the same value, as opposed to extending that out for the full hour or going over, for example. And that's something that we're, again, seeing across multiple programs. So the flexibility to say now for cohort 2, it's a 30 to 60-minute session. We're encouraging startups to come with a very clear idea of what they want to get out of those sessions. And once they've done that, they can say, okay, perfect, we're good for this week. We're going to go and implement it. And then next week we come back with another problem. So being really problem focused, but not sort of strict against, okay, it needs to be done in exactly this way or that way. So I think flexibility on that, clarity with the mentors, so they understand that is the approach as well. And likewise with the startups. In terms of value, think about mentoring here. The mentoring activities have regularly been sort of across almost all of our programs, the highest valued piece. I guess it is the one-to-one element. It's far more tailored, etc. To support this, we've always looked to go for the approach of a very sort of targeted allocation, matchmaking the profiles of the startups that we assess in the onboarding phase and the expertise of our mentors. And one thing I think it's worth mentioning here, with the mentoring, we always see there are kind of like 2 main approaches really to mentoring. So kind of you can do the one-to-one allocation of a startup to the mentor and they sort of work together for the whole program. Or you can have a startup and a pool of mentors covering different areas of expertise. And the startup selects different mentors for different areas. We went for the one-to-one allocation, and that got very good feedback from the startups. We specifically asked them if they would have liked the other approach, and pretty much everyone said the one-to-one was the right approach for them because it allowed them to build up a better rapport and relationship with their mentor. They could develop a stronger understanding of that. And there were additional sort of benefits there. Again, on the point of flexibility, we're very aware that whilst we are very proud of our pool of mentors, they will have their blind spots. So just because a startup and a mentor have been paired one-to-one, that doesn't mean that if the startup wants expertise in a particular area, let's say IP protection, and the mentor doesn't have that expertise, we're very clear as a program that that person can then go back to the coordinators, GForce in this case, and say, look, our startup wants this expertise. Is there anyone else in the program who can cover it? And we have that flexibility to support the mentor and startup relationship with kind of, additional knowledge, experts, etc. from elsewhere. I'm just thinking in terms of the priorities. So I've already mentioned kind of the peer-to-peer activities and the value that that has, the bespoke content of the mentoring sessions. So instead of saying over the course of these 8 sessions, you need to cover X, Y, Z topic, what we have done, and I think we've seen implemented in a few programs, is at the very outset, we get the startups to do a self-evaluation of what their priorities are, and that builds the foundation of their bespoke program. And then in the first sessions, again, we really encourage the mentors and the startups to build out an 8-week program that really suits them and sort of matches their exact needs. So in that sense, it's really targeted to what each startup needs, as opposed to just being sort of a fairly generic program, which is helpful to the startups, but leaves something on the table. And that ties to the early startup input and the feedback loops as well. I think the last point just to mention is the one on the industry mentors versus academic mentors. And again, this is an interesting challenge because depending on the profile of the founder, Some have a very strong preference for someone who has lived experience as an entrepreneur, as a founder, and others have a preference for sort of theoretical learnings, as that's their current focus. And you get some people who span the two, but trying to find that appropriate allocation is very important. And I think, again, listening to the startup feedback early on in the program is essential for that, and helping you be able to pivot and adapt accordingly. I think those are all the key points that I wanted to touch on in terms of the design, evaluation, learnings, etc., and broadly on the program. So I think, Nina, we can probably cut the slides there. And if anyone has any questions, obviously happy to answer them. And obviously can sort of follow up offline as well, if that would be useful.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rory. I think I might have like one question. I mean, I'm kind of part of it, but still I think that could be interesting for some other people listening right now. How is the success of the program measured? I mean, we talked a lot about the feedback, but how do you do it? Is it just a satisfaction, or is it also like any other points that you measure or want to measure afterwards?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So in terms of what I've popped up on the screen there, in terms of those scores, that's just a standard sort of evaluation of kind of, we asked both startups and mentors to rank the program out of 5. And that's just a fairly easy piece of data that we can use to kind of have that top level feedback of what their experience was. Beyond that, obviously, we're looking to gather a lot more information. So we're getting feedback on each of the workshops we're delivering, both in terms of sort of ranging from the speaker, quality, content, all of this, to the level that it was delivered at. We've been asking specifically feedback on kind of, the quality of the mentoring, the quality of the workshops and additional events. So there's a broader sort of data pool that ultimately at the end of the program will sit behind this. And then going beyond sort of just those points, I think in terms of how we ultimately will evaluate the success of this, we want to see what the impacts are on the startups. So what results they're able to achieve from this. Obviously, kind of the program has just finished, so it's still relatively early to be able to kind of assess that across the board. And I think that's something that we will look to do at a later stage this year, possibly ahead of that sort of event in Prague, where we can present back some interesting findings. But really understanding kind of what has been the impact for startups. Have they, as a result of the learnings, have they been able to generate new partner conversations, any strategic partnerships with industry? Has it helped support any specific product launches? And I guess of significant interest for a lot of the startups, has the support helped them raise funding or anything like that, whether public or private? So those are the kind of sort of success metrics that we will be looking at. But as I say, at this stage, it's a little bit too early, only sort of 2 or 3 weeks after the program's formally concluded. And I think even some of the mentors still had to go on for extenuating circumstances. So yeah, that will come at a later date in terms of the full evaluation.
Okay, thank you very much. I think there are no other questions. I'll just take a quick look in the chat, but I don't think so. As we're already a little bit ahead of not that well in time right now, I think we can just go on with Jessica, and then if other questions come to your mind, will you be here, Roy? Or do you have to leave?
Unfortunately, in 3 minutes, I actually have to run away to a separate.
But it's fine. I can just share the email and then.
Yeah,
if somebody else has a question specifically to Rory, we can just share your email afterwards.
Brilliant.
Okay, then Jessica, I think it would be great if you would just share your slides by yourself, if that's okay for you.
Yeah, it's better actually, because I don't want to interrupt you all of the time to click around, because it's a really tricky job. Okay,
Perfect.
just give me a second. Just give me a quick okay if you can see my screen.
I can see it.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right, so in terms of time, I'm not going to do a whole big introduction on my side. My name's Jessica. I'm the operative manager of the BITS Oberschneiding, which is a campus from the Deckendorf Institute of Technology, actually. Well, located in Bavaria. I'm not going to go over the whole map because I'm not going to bore you with with any of the standards that we have or the campuses that we have. But basically, our campus is in Oberschneiding, which is deep in the valleys of Bavaria, and the goal that we have with 3 campuses we're actually having right now is basically to help and support people with inventions or innovations, and organizations such as startups, scale-ups, even entrepreneurial companies that have new ideas from their portfolio on their way to become a scalable company or a scalable idea. So basically, the Silicon Valley program, which is our main service that we have, has a bit of a backstory, and I kind of want to share the backstory with you because it's pretty hard to understand, like, why is it called Silicon Valley program? What do you guys do with the Silicon Valley? So to give you a little bit of a history on this, why we collaborate with the Silicon Valley is right now me talking from a German perspective, but please be sure that everything that I talk about right now is also from the eyes of every other country that we have talked with, we have collaborated with, if it's either scientists or companies from all over the world. We all share the main key insights, and from a German's perspective, we have always been seen as kind of the land of thinkers and poets, and a place where great brilliance and great minds come together, like from history-wise, Goethe, Schiller, Kant, and so on, that shaped our cultural and intellectual view of the world. So with them still echoing their words and their philosophy and their depths of art, we have learned that we Germans are not only great poets by night and thinkers by day and beer enthusiasts in between, but we also have one thing that we are really, really good at. And I just want to explain this to you in a kind of a small example, because I bet you all know a similar or maybe even the exact scenario, which is you have a doctor's appointment, you go into your car, and basically you start listening to a Spotify podcast or your favorite song on the radio, and you're going to have an x-ray because your hand hurts like hell. So basically what this process has in common with the Germans is that this process would not be possible if Germans wouldn't have been available around that time. So German engineering is really a big part of our everyday world. And this is why, for example, Karl Benz and Gottlieb Daimler, with the first automobiles, created the way that we drive around, or basically just move from A to B. The MPEG 1 audio layer was created by the Fraunhofer Institute, which was then sold to an American company, and they, you know, all of you guys know the iPod, and it basically was created out of this concept. And also, getting an X-ray would not be possible without Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, who discovered that X-rays were actually able to see through muscle and tissue. So we can be very proud of our inventions as scientists, but the one thing that we've learned is that we wouldn't be anything without some key concepts that we have learned from the Silicon Valley. So here's something that Germany or any other country that has inventions or something they want to put into the market can learn from basic concepts that the Silicon Valley lives through every day. So one problem that we have in Germany and also in every other country is perfection versus prototyping. Why is that? We're always very focused on precision and often delay a speed to market probability, while the Silicon Valley thrives on being rapid, they thrive on being fast, and they just basically do things Like in Germany, when we say, oh God, we have this new product, it isn't ready, we need at least 10 more years of testing, the Silicon Valley just basically says, you know what, let's just launch it now. Even if it crashes twice a day and even if it's not perfect, we'll call it a beta version, but we'll have data on that. Another concept is the bureaucracy versus the boldness that the Silicon Valley has. So before we in Germany, for example, start an innovative project, we need to fill out at least 12 forms in duplicates and, you know, do everything right by law and just be really, really specific about our general data protection and stuff like that. You all guys, you know it. In the Silicon Valley, they always say, you know what? If it's not disruptive enough, we're not even starting with it. So let's figure out the laws and all of the restrictions later. Just let's try it out and see if it flies. So this stifle agility that we have here in Germany is not present in the Silicon Valley because they just embrace all of the risks that they take. And even if it sometimes bends the rules, they just try it. Another key concept that we can learn from them is that when you have an excellent idea and you don't have the money, you're rather in this kind of, you know, cloud and you're saying, oh, let's look for funding. Maybe there's someone who will give us money. In the Silicon Valley, you just ask around and tell people your idea and hope that someone has a little bit of pocket money for you to use. Another big thing is the startup culture versus established giants. I mean, you all know huge companies like BMW or even Siemens and stuff like that. They have great ideas that they put into the market. They have a huge market share still right now in their economy, but basically the Silicon Valley just says, why should I quit my job for something that is so cool and so innovative versus being in BMW or Siemens for over years? So in Silicon Valley, it's not really an idea to have job security or traditional industry dominance, rather than having some fun with some new ideas and just try them out and maybe even fail, but failure gives you some kind of learning. The last thing that we're really, really bad at in Germany here is networking. I mean, it's good that we're here all in the Teams section right now. We see each other, like, you know, listening maybe to each other. But in the Silicon Valley, you just basically go around, grab a coffee, talk to someone, be bold about your ideas, and maybe sometime you meet someone who can really help you on your way. So this leads us to our Silicon Valley program, basically, which is a program that we have been doing for over 10 years now. And we also have the Santa Clara University in the heart of the Silicon Valley on our board. And we basically created this concept and this program together based on those ideas that I told you right before I showed you this slide. So the initiative is basically to empower teams. I'm going to skip over those slides in terms of, you know, being faster, because I heard from Nina already that we're over the time a little. Okay, to the program. The program is tailored as a transformation program, which lasts for 9 months. You can apply as a startup, you can apply as a newly founded team from scientists maybe, or just people that think alike, that they have a great invention they want to share with the world, and they really want to have their market share also in the world. The Santa Clara University is a big part in this because, as I said, they are in the heart of the Silicon Valley. They have amazing networking possibilities for big companies like Meta, like Google, like Apple, Tesla, all of those companies that are very fast in their doing, very open-minded to new ideas. So it's a great partner that we're having here. And the structured and scientifically based process is actually written from the perspective of an investor. So we're not going through the basics like, oh, you need to have a business model canvas, you need to have this and that in order to establish your company, you need a legal team behind that, you need money. No, we actually look back from the final stage of the process here, and we ask investors, what does a German company or a German team need in order for you to put money in that? And that's the basic concept of the whole program. Behind that, there's also a strong ecosystem of investors and companies. Like I said, we have a lot of collaboration with companies in the Silicon Valley, but not just in the Silicon Valley. Also, we have amazing European companies that have also looked into this kind of process and said, oh, that's really good work that you're doing. And it also helps the new startups for us to become maybe a partner in the future. So the program itself, it starts with kickoff days where you just learn about the Silicon Valley mindset. You learn about untested assumptions, meaning asking your clients, is that really a product that you would give money for? Is that really an idea that you would use in your day-to-day business? What would be the business model that you're going to start off with the startup? What's the landscape, the competitive landscape behind this idea? What is maybe a good market for me to start in or to scale in? After that, when the teams kind of get into their first vibes with how fast-paced businesses and fast-paced startup and scale-up looks like, we actually pair them with direct mentors that can be from the Silicon Valley, that can be from Europe somewhere, from big companies, but the main thing that those mentors have to have established in their lives is that they have to at least finalize 2 exits in their life. So they basically already have the idea how a good scaling business works. After that, we have some workshops. You can see it on here on this slide. The workshops are titled under different topics. The first workshop, for example, is really doing a deep dive into the topic of market segmentation. The second workshop is kind of a risk and gap management topic. And during those workshops, we don't have like overall workshops for the whole teams that are participating on the program, but we do it in more like one-to-one sessions with their mentors. So the teams always have someone to talk about their current situation with. The final stage of the program is so-called Experience Week in the Silicon Valley, where all of the teams that participate in this program fly over to the Silicon Valley. The Santa Clara University hosts them, basically. We, as mentors and we as professors from a university, go with the teams over there, and they have to do really deep dives, really put their pants down and show what they have established in those 9 months. And the final thing that they have to do is to do a perfect pitch in front of real life investors. So the huge opportunity that those teams that are participating are really getting out of this whole situation is that they might even have a true investor invest in their idea, and maybe even, if they're lucky enough, come home with a huge amount of money that they can work with. All right, so the last 10 years, we had over 60 teams participating in that program so far. Approximately just the year 2025 by now, we have obtained seed funding for the teams around 14.5 million euro, round A. And this roughly created around 100 jobs plus in the startups that we had in our cohort last year. I can give you a short example if you want from one team that had a really amazing story in the Silicon Valley program. It was a team of 3 students, actually, that, you know, just formed during their university time, and they had this idea of a VR/AR app that intended to create a kind of a meditation application to offer relaxation, you know, after a hard work day. You would just put on your VR goggles and, you know, just calm down a little and do like a little spa in your own VR world. However, when participating in the program and talking a lot to different mentors, talking to their key and lead mentor, and talking to a lot of network partners that the mentees had, they actually found out that the app that they created could potentially serve as a substitute for Ritalin, which is a drug against ADHD symptoms. So basically they found out, okay, we had this completely different idea that we were going through with, but right now, through all the talking, through all the, you know, untesting assumption testing, plus all of the network contacts that they were having and talking to, they found out, okay, we kind of have this, niche in the medical sector that we can totally attack here. So one of the mentors said, you know what, I know some guy from Meta, Facebook Meta, and let's just talk to him. 2 days later, they had an appointment with Meta, and Meta said, okay, this is so cool. We are going to make a collaboration with you guys. And they went back home with a lot of money funded by Meta, which was really a great success. Just to give you an idea what the program can do for you. Yeah, so that's basically it from my side. If you're interested in the program or interested in any of the teams that have participated, just let me know. I've also put a QR code for my LinkedIn. You can write me anytime if you have some questions, or even right now after this presentation, we can talk a little. You can ask questions. I know it's a very rough overview of what we're doing, but the program is really huge and very it's a real deep dive. So if you have any questions, please just feel free to talk to me.
Thank you so much. I think it is really interesting, especially like the last success story that you shared it's really amazing. I will just give all the participants a second if they have any questions. You can even write them in the chat if you want. Otherwise, you can also just start speaking. If not, I will have another question for you. Sorry, hope that's okay. As this seminar is mostly targeted for people from universities and other research institutions, I think it would be interesting to know how are you linked? Are you linked to specific universities, or maybe you can share some more details about participants that maybe came from universities. How do you get them? Where are you marketing your program and stuff like that? So yeah.
Basically, we're really open to anyone who basically has a good product with already maybe 1 or 2 people that piloted with your service. I can give you a good example. I myself participated on the program before I started working for the program, basically. And I was before on a research institute also from the DIT, and we had a project which was basically, or had the goal basically to create an online platform for governments and for municipalities to share information, share data, to digitalize small processes that they had in-house. And we thought, oh, this thing is getting really huge, so maybe the Silicon Valley program would be a great approach to find out if someone would buy that product, basically, out of the pilot projects that we had. So it's actually a kind of a funny process. You just need to have a great idea and some potential market share that you think can obtain with that idea. So when we did the whole program, we also learned, oh, municipalities, not the greatest customers to have, I've got to be honest. They are really slow. They don't have a lot of money to play with. But during the program, we learned that's just a German perspective, right? So there was a mentor that we had, and he said, okay, you're having the goggles of the German scientist here, but maybe take a look to Latin America, where in Ecuador, for example, they have this huge problem of communicating within the community, and they have a lot of safety problems that they have to take a look at. So he said, I'm going to connect you to a guy who's basically like a security officer for the country. And he said, you know what, I'm gonna buy your whole product and I give you 30 million euros if you can change it a little and make it to our security-based platform in our country. And that is something that really struck me, because I thought, okay, we were having this, niche kind of thought with our service, but even from a small university like we are, we have this great idea. We have a little bit of time to play around with our idea to make it a little better. And then based on the context that we have through our mentors, we might be able to have a whole different perspective on this thing. And that is something that maybe other universities should keep in mind. And we are gladly happy if there's any team from any university with a great idea, with a great product, and they just want to start this whole process and just, you know, have a look where that takes them, basically. So maybe in some other nation, some other country, whatever you have as a scientific project, maybe could be a real product. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. I'm just checking. Okay, Martin, you have a question?
Yes, Jessica, thanks for your presentation. I would have a question to your seed financing. The budget you mentioned around 14 million euros this year. What is the source of funding for this budget? Where does the money come from? Thanks a lot.
Different kinds of money. Basically, we have a huge investors network, like VCs or even companies that are established here in Germany that have already participated on the program, where they say, okay, I have benefited from that program. There's a new team that we would like to, you know, have a partnering with, or even have stock shares with them. So basically the money is coming from all over the world. VCs mainly that say, I like this idea, I want to invest with you. And as I said, just companies that might have an interest in your product.
Thank you.
Okay, I think there are no other questions right now directly to you, Jessica, but we can just continue with our program right now, and for this means that we now have a lot of time to just go on for discussions and more general questions and answers. Maybe even if you have other questions to any of the speakers who are still here, I think you can ask them still right now. But okay, Martin?
Yes, Nina, first of all, thank you for the organization of this event, and thanks also to all the speakers. And since we have now some time for discussion, of course, we probably don't need to push it too much. But I would like to ask maybe the people who are here, participants, if you have any interesting experience with respect to technology transfer, or maybe even some acceleration program, as a couple of examples were mentioned here, or maybe with some interesting spin-off experience, please go ahead. Definitely, I would be interested to hear about it as well. So thank you. Okay, if not, I guess we can close the meeting. We have our emails and everything. And I would like to ask the participants who got interested in some things that were mentioned here, either from Czech Technical University or other presenters, reach out to us via email if you have any questions, or maybe some opportunities for cooperations or ideas. Definitely, we will be very happy to discuss them. Thanks a lot.
Yes, otherwise, I also think so. If nobody wants to share their experiences, or nobody has like any questions for now, I also think we don't have to do like the whole time. So I would just like to give you a small outlook, and then I think we can just skip the last few minutes. I think we learned some very good things today. We learned a lot about how technology transfer process can be structured in an effective way. I think we all I think one of the most important things that we got from the best practice examples is that you have to really be agile, so to be flexible with all the things that you do in tech transfer and adapt to the practical needs. I think that's one of the most important key takeaways from all the best practices that we heard right now. So I think that would be like the most important thing for me that I took away from this meeting today. So I hope you can do that in your future transfer processes. And apart from that, I would like just to give you some idea about the next steps, maybe from the CapTTict project, but also about the specific meeting. As mentioned before, we have some meetings planned again. So for example, the ICT tech transfer days for a greener and more digital Danube region. I think it would be great for some of you to learn more about it there, to attend there. And if we have more details, you can just look them up on our homepage and even our social media. We also have some cross-border matchmaking events planned in the future. One of them will be, I think, in a week from now. That might be a little spontaneous, but who knows? Maybe you're interested in it. Otherwise, we plan to have one more online in at the end of the year, but there will be more information about it soon on our homepage and again on our social media. For this specific meeting and also the other meeting that we had in November, you can watch it on YouTube. I will share all the slides and all the links with you in an email afterwards. So we will find them eventually. And yes, also this recording, it will be, I think it will take us some time to get it to YouTube, but then you can still watch it. And one little thing I would like to ask all the participants is to give us some feedback. That would be very great. We'll also mention it again in the email afterwards. So I just saw that somebody mentioned something in. Okay, it was just someone who has to leave now. So I think if you don't have any more questions or anything else, I will just close the meeting for now. We will give you a follow-up email with a lot of more information and the slides. So again, thank you for attending.